this game also pits two future Big 12 opponents against one another. Obviously, Utah joins the conference next season along with its former Pac-12 mates, I guess current Pac-12 mates, Arizona State, Colorado. Eric, just, from an insider's perspective, how was that move greeted by the fan base there in Salt Lake? And what can Big 12 fans kind of come to expect from this program? I mean, obviously back-to-back Rose Bowls, they're on a pretty good run.
Yeah, it's been interesting times here in Salt Lake City, kind of, following this latest round of college football realignment. Really, when USC and UCLA announced last fall that they were defecting to the Big Ten, that got a lot of people nervous. Honestly, like the TV deal has been just like kind of in bad shape for years, right? Like the Pac-12 network never could figure out a way to get on direct TV. That made everyone nervous. All of a sudden, like, okay, what are we going to do? And the commissioner, George Kliavkov, is holding out. He's like, well, we're seeing what we can do. Next thing you know, they're getting jumped in line by the Big 12, securing, these media rights, and just like that, everything falls apart, right? So there were some nervous days, some nervous hours that morning when Washington and Oregon, we're supposed to be on a president's conference call and just didn't show up, right? You read the writing on the wall at that point, and I think in that moment, everyone at Utah is a little bit nervous, right? Because you got to understand the culture in Utah, where everyone is just convinced that everyone else in the nation thinks we're just like this weird denizen of, like, I don't know, like Utah is almost not part of the United States, right? Like we got this perpetual chip on our shoulder, and so Utah fans were just immediately, going to, oh, we're going to be left out in the cold. We're going to be rejoining, we're going to get a bunch of Mountain West retreads filling up the Pac-12. And the next thing they're applying for Big 12 membership and getting it pretty much within 12 hours or whatever. So everyone was able to kind of lower their blood pressure a little bit. The temperature is able to come down. It was very definitely a couple of intriguing days here, just having that all unfold the way it did. In terms of what the Big 12 is getting, it's a program that probably will require a little bit of time adjusting to the league. That was certainly the case when they moved up from the Mountain West Conference to the Pac-12 a dozen years ago. But they've got the thing that works for them is they've got a coaching staff that's been here forever, so they've got consistency, right? This is the 19th season of head coach Kyle Whittingham. He's had offensive coordinator Andy Ludwig for a bunch of seasons now. Defensive coordinator Morgan Scalley's been around for several years, so like there's real consistency. And so Whittingham knows what he wants to do. He knows how he wants to run the program. Two things you can always count on with Utah football: they're going to have a strong defense, they're going to run the ball, right? Honestly, the reason it took as long to get going in the Pac-12 as it did is because they just weren't able to put up that level of points that you're accustomed to seeing from these Pac-12 shootouts, because the quarterback play wasn't quite as good. They feel like they finally have like kind of settled in terms of like recruiting the types of quarterbacks they need. But Utah football has been like an ascending program these last bunch of years. Like growing up here, I'm a native Utahn. Like when I was a kid, like Utah football was nothing. Right, like men's basketball was a thing under Rick Majerus, and Utah football was drawing 25,000. It still is not like a gigantic stadium like some of these that you see in Big 12 and Big 10 programs, SEC programs, but they have been constantly upgrading the stadium over the last half dozen years. It's up to 53,000. They've sold out. They've had a ton of sellouts in a row. They've been over capacity a bunch of games in a row. So like it's definitely kind of reaching its peak in terms of fan involvement and in terms of quality of play. As you mentioned, hard to argue with two straight Rose Bowl appearances.
Yeah, now they'll get that Big 12 money, and that could help with some facility upgrades for sure. It was funny when you were talking about Utah, people worried about, the rest of the country thinking they're kind of their own country. Here in Texas, they'd be like, yeah, we are our own country, baby. We were our own country. They've got flags that will we'll say that. But yeah, I think they're gonna fit in actually pretty well. In terms of the four Pac-12 teams that the Big 12 added, obviously it makes it the most sense from a geography standpoint. I mean, they're the most sort of easternmost teams, I guess you would say. But I think, culture wise and stuff, like that idea of playing defense, running the football, that's kind of like heartland type football. I mean, that's old school, maybe Big 8 type football. I mean, so I think they're going to fit in well. It'll be interesting to see, I'm sure, for you guys up there, Utah and BYU as a conference game, won't it?
Yeah, I'm excited about it, right? Because you've got this subset of Utah fans who, as soon as the Utes got in the Pac-12, decided, hey, we don't need BYU anymore. They're into like they couldn't get an invite to a big time conference. We don't need them, right? I think the vast majority of Utah and BYU fans are thrilled to have that become, an annual thing again. And them both being in the Big 12 is going to make that certainly, a lot more consistent than what it's been these last handful of years where it's been kind of on and off. I think the rest of the country, now that these two teams are both, part of a big time conference, and, that maybe gives people a little more incentive to tune in when this game gets put on ESPN or whatever. It's a big time rivalry. It's very intense. It's right up there with some of the best rivalries in the country, just in terms of passion on either side of it.
Yeah, no doubt.